but the this album, you know, it just kind of, the selection of tracks and the flow of it is so good. It just feels almost like a real album, and that's like a very big selling. I think this has sold 3.5 million copies, so that's the top compilation of the era, and that introduced all of us to the bands that went before. One of the bands went before, Deep Purple. The other band we got into, Ozzy era, Sabbath. So Paranoid, the single, got reissued. So we got we got those early Black Sabbath albums. So it was great. You had all the new stuff, but you could go back and find. You could get the old Scorpions on. You could get the old Priest, get the old Sabbath. It was amazing. It was like this treasure chest just opened. So that's July. Hold on, we've missed something really important from July. What's that? July the 25th. Oh, it's the second biggest selling album ever. Back in Black. Yeah. AC/DC, what an access band they were. You know, pretty much the first rock, hard rock, metal, whatever you want to call it, band people got into at that time was AC/DC. We'd heard Touch Too Much on the radio and seen it on Top of the Pops. Back in Black came out. We'll not go on about the Bon Scott tragedy and everything. It's still a great record. We bought it on cassette. We were on holiday in Devon, so we went to Plymouth and we bought it in Virgin Records, me and my brothers. It was a holiday present. It was $3.99, I think, something like that, on cassette. And everyone, you know, a lot of people had this on cassette or vinyl. I think time's been really kind to it, and a little unkind in other areas. The production's phenomenal. You go to any gig, they're always testing the sound with this album. They either use that, and sometimes they use the Night Fly by Donald Fagen. They usually do this to kind of do the final check, and they use the Night Fly by Donald Fagen to match different frequency elements. It's so well recorded. It's just an unbelievably beautiful sounding record. Starts off Hell's Bell, Shoot to Thrill, amazing. Then you got What You Do for Money, Honey. You know, 3 really belting tracks. Giving the Dog a Bone, cool track. Don't like it as much as I used to. Let Me Put My Lovin' to You. Love that track. Kind of the closest you'll get to an AC/DC ballad. On the verses, like that track a lot more than I did when I was younger. Back in Black, we've heard it 1,000 times. It's classic. You Shook Me All Night Long. Some people say it's an AC/DC song you don't need to hear again because we've heard it too much. It's a really good commercial hard rock track. Did a lot for the band. Have a Drink on Me, great deep cut, love it. Then it kind of tails off, Shake a Leg, probably the weakest track on the album. Rock and Roll Like Noise Pollution, I like the tune. It's just Highway to Hell is a better record, and Power Age is even better for songs. And Let There Be Rock's probably better, I think. But it's just, this record sounds so good and it captures the time. And it continues to capture people's imaginations to this day. So that was Back in Black, the biggest album of 1980 by a rock band, and now the second biggest album of all time in Western music. Then we go into August. Next album is really important to me because the first single I bought was the first single off this album, and it was on clear vinyl, and it had a free patch, and it's this Michael Schenker Group's debut album. So back end of 1978, Schenker leaves UFO for the second time. Then he does Love Drive with the Scorpions, does some gigs with the Scorpions. Quite interesting. There's photos on YouTube and you can hear gigs with Schenker playing with the Scorpions. And he wears like a yellow kind of jacket suit, and he's got a pinstripe leather tie. He looks really cool. Very late 70s, almost like he's in Blondie or something. And then he has a bit of a breakdown and he smashes his white Flying V, smashes his Flying V's up and cuts his hair. That's why on this album he's got short hair. If you look at the Obsession era UFO, he's got kind of hair a bit longer than me and a tight perm. Well, not that tight, because he always had a long straight hair before that. And then he has mental health problems. Obviously he's had drink problems, mental health problems, Michael Schenker. He smashes his guitar, cuts his hair. So when he does this album, that's when he has his black and white Flying V. That's a 2-colour thing, and that's his really famous guitar he used all the way through the 80s. This is a great record. The production's a little muddy, but Armed and Ready, Cry for the Nations, Victim of Illusion, Bijou Pleasurette, that was a B-side of Armed and Ready, Feels Like a Good Thing. Actually, yeah, kick-ass track. If you go on Sea of Tranquility, Pete Pardo does his top. That's his top Schenker track, and it's a really great deep cut into the arena. We know that. Looking Out from Nowhere, good. Tales of Mystery, originally an instrumental called Arbery Hill off Obsession, and then Schenker developed it into a full track. Lost Horizons, the epic, he still plays that live. It's a really good record. His playing's phenomenal on it, and Michael Schenker, phenomenal in UFO, phenomenal with MSG. He does an album in 1981 and 82, and a live album, and his playing's just amazing. My first Guitar Hero, I couldn't play. I was trying to learn to play guitar, but when I first heard Schenker, there was just something clicked. There's a sense you get that when you hear it, you think something about that's better than other people, and it's the notes, the sound, and I got that same emotion from Frank Marino, Uli John Roth, when I first heard him. Didn't get Eddie Van Halen at first, a bit too too American, didn't quite understand that, and Randy Rhoads for the same reason, but the European players and KK and Glenn and that, although I couldn't play what they did at all, they touched me. But yeah, just brilliant. I used to play the Armed and Ready single to death. A relative friend, a friend of my mum and dad, let me a old mono record player before we got like a music centre, and I used to play it on that. It was amazing. So that was a great album in August, and a couple of others. I think Repression by Trust might come out in August. Repression by Trust, they did it in French and then redid it in English. Quite punky, really, Trust. But Nino Creef, the guitarist, quite Schenker-esque, very good player. They had the track L'Elite, which was on the Kilowatts compilation, so I heard that. That's on the debut Trust album. And they played Reading Festival, and yeah, they got some traction over here, and they were good friends with Bon Scott. That was the other thing. He got some interesting bands from other countries. The other band is the Newcastle's own, Whitley Bay's own Tigers of Pantang released Wildcat. So Tigers getting in there a little later after Maiden and Leopard, which may not have helped them as much at that time. You got to get out of the gate early, but Wildcat, really solid debut, cool artwork, and I had a copy of that when I was younger. That's another key new album. And then another album out in August, but I'm not sure, it could be October, is Glory Road by Gillan. Like I said, I had that album when we were younger. Good record, great Bernie Tormé guitar work. And Ian Gillan was someone, the Gillan band did well, again, because he'd been in Purple, he got traction. He'd done those sort of jazzy albums like Clear Air Turbulence and Scarabaeus, and then he did Mr. Universe. Got the right sound, and then he comes out with Glory Road, and he's all set a strike. He does very well, and Gillan had a lot of success from 80, 81, 82 with their albums and singles in the UK charts. I think in the end they split up really because they didn't have much more success out of the UK, probably in Europe, and it was expensive to run the band. So then we're into September. September, as far as I know, has only got one album, September 20th, but it's one of the greats. It's The Blizzard of Oz, Ozzy Osbourne. So interesting, is it Ozzy Osbourne, is it Blizzard of Oz? Well, at the time, it was called A Blizzard of Oz. Always kind of feeling was it was Ozzy Osbourne's band, but really it's a solo album, I suppose, the way things went. Not really... there's lots you could say, but it's been done to death about this album. Obviously, Randy Rhoads, classic guitar performance. I Don't Know, Crazy Train, Goodbye to Romance, Suicide Solution, Mr. Crowley, all classic Ozzy tracks. Cool tracks like Revelation, Earth Mother, and Steal Away the Night. I think the next year's album, Darrow Madman's, better because it's got some more diverse elements, but this is a great track. You got You Looking at Me, Looking at You, which is a B-side. It's a bonus track on this CD. That was really good, and he did a live track, You Said It All, which was on the Mr. Crowley EP, I think. And You Said It All was a great track, so either of those tracks could have made this album in place of other ones. Basically saved Ozzy's bacon. He found Randy Rhoads, Lee Kerslake, Bob Daisy play really well, and this was the start of it. I think it sold 4 million copies in the States, 5 million copies, and the beginning of a career that's in over 100 million album sales. Just a classic at the time. Again, someone who'd been around for 10 years getting traction, The people like me going, oh, that's a guy who used to be in Black Sabbath, had a poster. Then we go into October. I don't own any of these albums. I did used to own one of them. Lightning to the Nations, Diamond Head. Again, they put it out themselves. They couldn't get a deal for some reason. Later on, they signed to MCA. Very influential, but came out, obviously didn't have the major label backing, and then probably didn't get the traction they should have if it had a major label and say they released it the same month as On Through the Night or Wheels of Steel. They would have got the recognition there and then they deserved. Obviously, Metallica, they're a really influential band, and I think the things have gone well for certainly Brian Tatler since then. So that was October 3rd. October 10th, Chinatown by Thin Lizzy. Again, another band getting some traction. Not the best album, but Killer on the Loose, Chinatown, great tracks, and Only the Strong and so on. There was a really cool Killer on the Loose double single, so it was like in an embossed sleeve, and you had 2 7-inches in it. And that track famously didn't get played on Top of the Pops because it was at the time of the Yorkshire Ripper killings. But yeah, that was another cool thing you could get back in 1980, really cool single packages, and that was one of them. And some bands, will later on copy that idea of having the 2 7-inches in there. Another album out in October 1980, another band getting a second wind, a cult heavy metal band from the early 70s. So in the early 70s, you've got people are going to listen to Zeppelin, Sabbath, Uriah Heep and Deep Purple. And then if you're looking around for more to listen to, you might go to Nazareth, Wishbone Ash, stuff like that. And another band is Budgie. So Budgie started, their first album comes out in 71. And then by 73, they do their first really run of classic albums, 73, 74, 75. Then things tail off, as it does for a lot of bands, and then they get a different guitarist in, John Thompson, in 1980. They make the Power Supply album, and it's a cool record, and they get some traction again on the back of what's happening. Then we go into November, Ace of Spades, Motorhead. There's a lot I could say about that album. We had it, interestingly enough, the Ace of Spades single had a great B-side on it called Dirty Love. The Bomber single had Over the Top as well. Great Motorhead tracks. Classic album. Some people, I think, pick Overkill as the out-and-out classic, or Bomber. They maybe prefer those records. But it's in that period where Motorhead's on an amazing run. Overkill, Bomber, Ace of Spades, No Sleep to Hammersmith. And then the final sort of big chart success with the Iron Fist album. I think an album which is better remembered now than it was at the time. But it's 12 tracks on Ace of Spades. Loads of classics. We Are the Road Crew, Jailbait, Bite the Bullet. A really strong record. Motorhead were massive. They were a big band. Then November 14th, Saxon pull off the double whammy. Strong Arm and the Law. For some people, this is superior to Wheels of Steel. I prefer Wheels of Steel, just a bit. This is a great record. Heavy Metal Thunder, Tell 'Em Back Again, Strong Arm and the Law, Love Strong Arm and the Law, Taking Your Chances, great track. 20,000 Feet, yep, cool. Hungry Years, love that one. Biff Byford just doing about explorers, love that Biff history. Next track 7, Sixth Form Girls, really interesting that, because when I was, for a while I was like, Sixth Form Girls, I'm not massive into that track. And I've really grown to love this track, because what I like is, if you heard that title, you think it was some kind of lewd, perverted thing. But it's not. It's the lyrics, what Biff Byford does so well, he's just singing about young girls coming out of school, they're in sixth form, they're full of energy, they're meeting the lads who work at the factory, because typically girls tend to go out with older boys, because boys are immature. And it's just capturing a really simple sentiment of, something you probably saw when he's coming out of work himself in the Barnsley area. So I like that. I like the sentiment of the lyrics. And then you got the classic Dallas 1pm, really cool Saxon epic. So a really strong record, Saxon pulling off 2 classic albums in 1 year. Like I say, not many bands have done that. There's only 3 others, in my opinion, but there could be others. And that's it. In December, Angel Witch released their debut album on Bronze. Again, difficult for a new one band. If you come in later in that year, I think it's harder to get the traction if you don't come earlier in the year. The Angel Witch albums does suffer from, some poor production elements, but it's quite evil. they've got an interesting sound. It's got an Evil album cover, John Martin artwork, and there's some real doomy riffs and some good guitar. They definitely had something, but you know, for whatever reason, they'd kind of split after that and went off to other bands and reformed later. Yeah, that's the end of the albums of 1980. There will be other ones, and I'm sure people, if they look at this, they would go, you know, he's forgotten this, he's forgotten that. You know, as the years went on, 1981, 82, you got more other great records. But it's just something about that year. I think it's the combination of the new Wobham taking hold the year before, at the end of 79, and then just, you know, all those great tracks, bands being on top of the pops. It's just so exciting, you know. Tiz Was, you know, there's loads of metal on Tiz Was. You know, it's just you know, metal. You know, the rock and the metal went mainstream to a certain extent, and it was the beginning of building the 80s thing, where, you know, by the end of the decade, you know, it will have gone too commercial, and you know, things change. But yep. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that little ramble, but it was just something I just wanted to capture, and well, we've got time on our hands and celebrate. Thanks very much.